Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /Entitled People, where people truly believe the world revolves around them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, we've got entitled Karens messing with the wrong people, guys. Bad neighbors, new landlords, ex-Karen wives, smug fake friends, and more are getting taught lessons they won't forget. I hope you enjoy today's stories. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. There was a house in our area that was known for having cool murals inside, done by the previous tenant. The outside was pretty tame, and she has a pre-built facade to make the house look like a cottage. Inside was all hand-done murals of Disney movies and fairy tales. The lady was an art teacher when she was younger, and later, she started one of those paint with wine type businesses, which she did well, before fully retiring to just doing paint commissions and furniture decorating. With that said, she had an agreement with the original landlord about the art. Since it wasn't outside, it wasn't gonna be a problem. She's been living in that house since the mid-80s with promises of getting the house in time. Unfortunately, he passed before anything was signed and legitimized, and his kids took over. One of the sons visited the house to inspect it with his daughter, and apparently they fell in love and they wanted the art house for his daughter. My neighbor didn't have a lease, which made the fight harder, and they used the art on the walls as an excuse to evict her. She was devastated, but she was able to buy a property that fits her needs at the last minute in another state that had a full art studio on the first floor. Now, she originally wanted to leave the house as is, without the cottage-looking front, but my friend offered to restore the house to quote Rebecca standards for free, since he needed to figure out how to use powered paint sprayers. For those that don't know, Rebecca condition is what we call flipper houses. It's always the same effing colors, white with grays all over the house and the dark tone flooring. He also had a friend that did landscaping to help her with the front of the house. She agreed, and we moved all of her furniture out to storage units, and my friend let her stay in his guest house for free of charge if she did a mural on the living room wall. She had the house cleaned out in a week. On the second week, they buffed all the walls with sanders. All the murals from the front to back were gone, and it just looked like blotches of colors. My friend, being the ever-diligent painter that he is, masked anything that wasn't paint and sprayed primer everywhere with his new toy sprayer. And let me tell you, this thing was pretty badass. You can spray a whole wall in 4 passes. After the paint dried, he used his Rebecca collection of colors to essentially kill the character of the house. The floors were tile, so he left it all alone, but the walls were white semi-gloss. The wood paneling walls, the trim, the switch covers, the outlet covers, the counters and cabinets were all sprayed in the most depressing shade of gray. The house looked dead inside when I went to check it out. It was weird not seeing all the murals. The front of the house was the last project. She agreed to give his landscaping friend the bushes in exchange for the labor of removing the cottage facade without breaking it. The landscaper basically ripped everything out and just dumped gravel and sand with a boulder for decoration. This weekend, I went to fix some problems at an old neighbor's house, and I noticed the house was still empty, and I asked the neighbor if he'd seen anyone move in. He said earlier in the week there were some U-Hauls there, but none of them were unloaded, and that was the last time they remember seeing anyone there. I bet that daughter was in for a surprise when she saw the house get turned into a basic hellhole. Yeah, I wish I could see the looks on their faces when everything was gone. And hey, if you're using my mural and art on the walls as the stupid reason to evict me, you're not gonna get to enjoy any of that art for yourself. I can tell you that. Also, like, they could have easily asked her for a commission to do murals in their own home, but they chose to kick her out of her home to steal her art instead. I'm glad this was the outcome. Like, that was so satisfying. Okay, so this is a bit long, but I need to get it off my chest. I live in a small cul-de-sac, nothing fancy, just your average neighborhood. My driveway fits 2 cars, mine and my husband's, perfectly fine. For for the most part, everyone here minds their own business, except my neighbor who we'll call Jack. For whatever reason, the guy thinks my driveway is like extra parking for his family and friends. The first time it happened, I thought it was a mistake. His brother's car was there, and he said it would just be a sec. A week later, it was some friend of his dropping something off. Now, I didn't love it, but I figured, whatever, not worth making it awkward. But it kept happening. I'd come home from work. I'm a nurse, so some days I'm wiped out and there was a random car blocking me. One night, I had to park halfway down the street and carry 5 bags of groceries home because his buddy's truck was in my spot. And here's the worst part. Every single time I said something, he would just give me a half smile and he'd go, "Oh yeah, sorry, they'll be gone soon." Like I'm the one being difficult. The final straw was when I got home late Friday night after a 12-hour shift. I'm still in scrubs, starving, with takeout that's getting cold in the passenger seat, and boom. This giant white SUV is parked dead center in my driveway, like not even off to the side. The thing's full on blocking me from even pulling in. I knock on the door, no answer. I call Jack, and he finally picks up, and super casual, he goes, "Oh yeah, that's just my in-laws. They'll only be here a couple of hours. Just go park on the street. It's not a big deal." And just like that, that was it for me. I called a tow truck, and yes, I did check before. Where I live, if somebody blocks your private driveway, you're allowed to tow immediately. The tow guy shows up in 20 minutes, and the SUV was gone even before I finished half my fries. About an hour later, there's furious pounding on my door. Jack's beet red, and his in-laws are yelling in the background. The guy's going off about how I, quote, didn't have to take it that far. I just said, well, you told me it wasn't a big deal, so I treated it like it wasn't a big deal. And then I closed the door in his face. They had to pay $300 to get their car back. And funny enough, ever since then, my driveway has stayed crystal clear. Not even for, quote, just a sec. You know what? Sometimes you have to take it that far for people to get the hint. And I love the fact that it's the in-laws out of everyone that got towed because you know they were giving him crap for that. With that said though, I do love the logic here. Just park on the side of the street. It's no big deal. Like, if it's no big deal, why the heck did your in-laws knowingly park in a stranger's driveway instead of parking in the street? Like, the self-entitlement here is wild, guys. So it's been about 2 years since this happened, but I just got confirmation from a friend who attended her tattoo appointment that it was because of what I said. And here's the backstory. I'm a 25-year-old female, and I was introduced to Peggy, fake name who's also 25, through a mutual friend. She had recently moved into the friend's neighboring apartment unit, and she was quickly introduced to our friend group. Almost immediately, I could tell that we weren't gonna get along, based off of some of the backhanded compliments that were given. But I decided it was too quick to judge her fairly, and I invited her to a game night that a friend and I were hosting, and that was a huge mistake. Game 1, sardines. It was a drunken game of sardines in the dark. Peggy faked a fall and she pushes my head into a shelf. And how do I know she faked it, you might ask? Because she literally told me in front of everyone and she laughed about it, saying, "I found him first. That's why I pushed you." Game number 2 was King's Cup. Peggy calls me out during the never have I ever portion for having gone through a divorce. Now, talking about it normally wouldn't have bothered me since everyone who was there already knew about it, and they were really supportive during that time. But it was the fact that she was trying to single me out and laugh at me and shame me for it. Throughout the rest of the night, this kind of behavior continued, and by the end, I was thoroughly convinced that she had some sort of vendetta against me. Finding out what, or in this case, who it was, took almost no time at all. One of our friends, who I'll call Mark, was in attendance that first night. Mark is 28 years old, he's tall, kind, funny, and an attractive guy. Essentially, he's catnip for her type. At the time, Mark and I were pretty close friends, and Peggy did not like that. For the next 6 months, anytime he was around, I had to deal with the most ridiculous, awkward, and petty attempts of her trying to single me out and embarrass me. Now here's where the tattoo comes into play. I had been planning on getting a dragon tattoo for over a year. I'm fully aware that dragons are a common and trending tattoo, but I wanted it anyways because it was special to me and my mom. I had even worked with my tattoo artist on incorporating her favorite flowers into the piece and figuring out what kind of style and other details I wanted. About a month before my appointment, Peggy heard a friend and I talking about the tattoo, and she started asking questions. And I swear, I could see the moment the light bulb went off in her head because she smiled the biggest effing smile I've ever seen. My light bulb moment happened shortly after. When she asked where and what kind of dragon tattoo I wanted to get, I just lied. I told her how much I love the movie Spirited Away, because I do, it's a banger, and then went on a tangent how I grew up on that movie, how my dad showed it to me, and that it would be cool if Haku was wrapping around my arm or something. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, one of the main characters is a boy named Haku, who turns into a dragon. Peggy had never seen this movie before, so I encouraged her to check it out and ended the conversation there. Now, considering she's never seen it before, I didn't think she'd actually do it, but she did it. And it wasn't just a tiny, cutesy little thing either. She committed to my exact description, like the thing's frickin' huge. When she showed it to me 2 weeks later, trying to boast about it, I was in shock. And she probably thought I was upset for taking something from me. But I went home that night, and I switched between feeling awful for lying to her and laughing for how utterly unbelievable she was for doing it. 2 years later, and I'm still doing that. I'd confessed to a friend recently about my lie, and that's when she told me. She went to the tattoo appointment with Peggy that day, and word for word, Peggy had said to her, she's gonna be so upset. This is like the exact tattoo she wanted. The post ends there, guys, but oh my goodness, like getting a tattoo to spite someone is probably one of the worst reasons to get a tattoo. Like it's practically permanent and it's now a part of your arm. And the fact that she knew nothing about the damn thing, aside from the fact that I got it to make someone jealous, I really hope she regrets it one day. And guys, OP does share a picture of the girl's arm. Let me know your thoughts. Some frickin' people, I tell you. So early on in my career, I worked as an engineer for a defense contractor for about 4 years, getting my typical 2 to 4% raises and standard promotions that take years and years to qualify for. I then realized that my current role was pretty much maxed out for the foreseeable future, and I would be scraping by for years more. So I tried to get on the management track, and I got given a project engineer position to prove myself. I managed a team of 4 engineers, 1 designer, and 2 admins, and we designed and manufactured a system that made $1.6 million in sales in our first year of work. We got the company a patent, were nominated by the USAF, and became finalists as Defense Contractor Technical Team of the Year. We were flown to DC for a big awards ceremony. I spent 100 days away from my family that year, traveling to test locations, customers, vendors, all that stuff. It was brutal, but we were wildly successful. When my annual performance review came in, mine was 10 out of 10. I was thrilled, and then I found out one of my team members, who had a different manager, was promoted early to a senior position, and I did not. I just got the standard 3% raise again, and I was livid. I had a meeting with my boss, and his response was that he didn't think my team member deserved a promotion or a big raise, but he wasn't their boss, so basically, I should try real hard again and we'll see next year. And I thought to myself, F that. I basically quiet quit, and I barely worked my 40 hours and went home. I never traveled unless I really wanted to. I never stayed late, and I took almost every Friday off to burn through my leave. I also took all my sick days. My mental health was much better, and the only thing I really did extra was take advantage of the education budget our group had, but rarely used. My previously promoted coworker, who I really liked personally, started taking MBA evening classes that the company reimbursed him for, but they came with obligations to stay there for X amount of years. They also had a nice budget for software training without such stipulations, so we both signed up for FEA and 3D modeling classes. We traveled around together taking these classes and building our resumes. About a month after the classes were finished, I secretly started applying for jobs that required those specific skills, and I quickly got hired for a position with a base annual income that was 200% my existing rate, plus it paid overtime. I put in my notice and my boss was really upset. He said stuff like, "But you have to stay. We just paid for you to travel all over to learn these new skills that we need. Don't you have any loyalty or guilt?" As the conversation went on, it went to, "How much are they paying you? Let's see if we can match it." Well, that's more than I make. It was, and with overtime, I made about 3 times the following year for a competitor. It was life-changing good times. They say the best revenge is success, and I love how OP's in a much better position in life, making 3 times the amount. Like, wow. And the fact that OP's boss, upon finding out, was like, "Hey, that's way more than I make," is the cherry on top of this whole thing. But yeah, funny how a person's only valued when they've got a foot out the door. So I'm relatively new at my job, and it's not the most organized place. There's a full kitchen, break room with a full fridge, freezer, and even an oven. There are no rules about the food in the fridge. Some are there to share and some's private. I just stick to what I've brought and I keep it in a small bag to keep it from being confused with a shareable. Another thing, apparently there has been a rash of food thefts and no one spoke about them, at least with me. And it seems that everyone was prepared to suffer in silence. So yesterday, I brought my lunch in and it was leftovers and it was spicy. Now I do enjoy spicy, but this was a bit much, even for me. I've learned that in this area I live in, people like things much sweeter and much less spicy than I'm used to. So when I enter the break room for my lunch, a bunch of people were standing around and one of the guys, Brent, was getting his blood pressure taken by the HR lady. I was concerned, so I came over, and he immediately starts yelling at me, telling me that I tried to poison him. I was so confused. But after a whole back and forth, I realized that Brent had stolen and attempted to eat my lunch, and he was claiming that I put an inedible amount of spices in it. I had to explain that I like spicy food and I didn't expect him to take my lunch. And now, looking back at it, I'm shocked that he knew it was mine. Like, it's in a small floral lunch bag and I didn't put my name on it. So that's how everyone now knows that Brent is 1, a food thief, and 2, he can't handle his spice. Yeah, I think everyone will agree when I say that Brent 1000% deserved that. And for the guy to try to blame OP and get them in trouble, the frickin' audacity, right? In my opinion, food thieves should be fired on the spot. Like, how can you trust someone at work when they're outed as a thief? Because if you can steal from people that you spend over 8 hours a day with 5 days a week, you're probably gonna steal other things. So back when I was 14 years old, my sister was still regularly trying to get me to give her money. I tried to write out an IOU to see if she'd sign it in front of Dad. And she pretty much reacted exactly how I thought she would, by blowing up at me and then crying to Mom. Mom pretty much always sided with her till my dad got involved. At first, my sister was begging to borrow money, but I called her out and I said she'd never pay it back. That's why I made the IOU. After that, she starts parroting our mom's words of how girls need more money than boys, and I should just give it to her. That awoke the more petty side of me. I knew that my sister was practically salivating over the money in my safe, and she'd do almost anything to get at it. So I came up with a plan to try to make her stop. I updated my ledger for how much money I'd saved and then walked in the living room while holding it. I then left it on the coffee table and pretended to go to the bathroom. I left the door cracked and I saw my sister pick up the ledger and start reading it. and she looked pissed. She then put it back where it was and she left the room. Now for the next part of the petty revenge I took. I found my dad's old camcorder in the basement. The thing was from the 90s, but it could record 6 hours of footage on one VHS tape. I hid it in my room under a pile of laundry on my bed, and then I put a $20 bill on my dresser. Now, I usually shut and locked my door when I left my room because of my sister's past actions. She's an opportunist by nature, so I knew exactly what she'd do. It took 3 attempts with me leaving my door ajar before she took the bait. I pretended to forget to shut my door before going to work odd jobs or going for a bike ride. On the 3rd time, I went back to my room and the $20 bill was gone. I then pull out the tape of the hidden camcorder and I put it in my bedroom TV with a built-in VCR. Not even 1 hour after I left, she comes sneaking into my room. She saw the money, she took it, and ran. I immediately called my mom and told her that sister stole from me again. She flatly denied it as usual. I then say, "Sorry mom, but this time I have video evidence. She stole money from my room." Mom says, "So what? You should have locked the door or you should have put it in your little safe." I tell her that's not an excuse and you know it, especially after everything that's already happened. Now, you know how this'll go down. Either you get sister to give me back the money she took, or I'll call dad right now, and you and I both know what dad will do. My mom's face contorts and she says, "Fine." She then leaves to get my sister and she comes back dragging sister by the hand. My sister's screaming, "But I didn't do anything, let me go." Meanwhile, I just hit play on the VCR remote and I said, "Really? Then what's this?" My sister starts tearing up, seeing herself on camera taking the money. My mom then says, "Give it back." My sister then ran to her room and she came back with a $20 bill. She crumpled it up, dropped it on my feet saying, "I hope you choke on it," before blowing me a raspberry and slamming my door shut. After that, my sister barely asked me for money at all because I was still wanting her to sign an IOU. She started begging more from mom, who hardly ever gave her any money unless dad took away her allowance for the month, and they both avoided me for a while. Getting mom to make sister return the $20 was a huge blow to both of their egos, and it finally made my sister start seeing that she couldn't get what she wanted from me anymore. When I told my dad what I did later on, he got a good laugh out of it and he said I shouldn't have baited her. But it was a good way to teach both her and mom a lesson they don't soon forget. Sadly, I don't have the tape with the video of her stealing the $20 anymore. It mysteriously disappeared not long after this incident. Likely my mom or my sister threw it away. Honestly, with siblings like that, who needs enemies, right? And shame on mom for always siding with sister and teaching her it's okay to steal from her brother. Like, it was especially ridiculous when she blamed OP for not locking their door and not having their money stored in their safe. Like, how about teaching your kids to not steal from one another? And seriously, reading this post, I thought sister was like older than OP, but no. At the time, she was only 10 years old. My goodness. So here's some backstory. I'm a 42-year-old male, and my ex-wife, 44, and I were married for almost 20 years. Over that time, she's had 4 affairs of varying degrees, including a relationship with a very close friend of mine from our church. I tried to make it work, and after the last emotional affair, I couldn't do it anymore. I filed for divorce just over 2 years ago. We're still going through the divorce, and she's been high conflict the whole time. She's painted herself as a victim, and I go to a new church, but I still have some friends at my old one, as I attended there for over 30 years. So that said, here's my petty revenge. My girlfriend and I have been dating since January. She's aware of my situation, and we're both having fun. I have older kids, and she has younger kids. For Labor Day, we both had the day off and wanted to do something fun. I mentioned that my old church does a picnic every year at a park. There's games and activities for the kids and a big potluck barbecue. I told her that my ex would likely be there, but it's a big event and we could keep to ourselves. I'd also be able to introduce my girlfriend to my friends from my old church. Knowing that, my girlfriend made sure that she was extra cute. We had matching socks, and I wore a shirt that said, "Built for Conflict" on the back. We got to the barbecue, and my girlfriend made a dessert to share, and I was grilling. My ex sees us, and she looked beside herself. She eventually came over, and she taps my girlfriend on the shoulder, and she snarkily said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm his wife." My girlfriend said, "Nice to meet you," and she held out her hand to shake my ex's. My ex then said, "It's awkward for you to be here, and I hope you feel that way." To which my girlfriend said, "Okay." And with that, my ex walked off. Later, my ex approaches me and she said, "This isn't your church anymore. I think you should leave." I just said, "That's not gonna happen," and kept walking. She then went back to her friends, my old friends, and she was distraught. She eventually asked the pastor to ask me to leave. He's my best friend, and he was the best man at my wedding. He came up and talked to me so he could tell her he did. And that's when I told him that she needed to grow up and I wasn't leaving. He went back to my ex and she went unhinged, saying we had to leave. She tried to make it some spiritual thing. Eventually, she gave up and she went to the friend she had an affair with and his wife to be comforted. They're still friends, I don't get it. Meanwhile, my girlfriend and I just watched and laughed. My ex has been terrible this whole time, and whatever control or narrative she thought she had was destroyed. Everyone just watched as she acted like a witch while we smiled and waved. In the end, the kids had fun, we got to catch up with old friends, and my ex-wife got put in her place. It was such a good day. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /Entitled People. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode where psycho Karens think they run the airport. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.